Okay, here we go. Francis Cress Welsing, M.D. You are a Washington, D.C.-based psychiatrist, and you're author of the Cress, your middle name, we should say, Theory of Color, Confrontation, and Racism. You call racism white supremacy. To be sure, a provocative and controversial theory on skin color and oppression. Well, I'm ready. So is this mostly but not exclusively white audience. Let them have it, Doctor. How... Boy, oh boy, do you need an escort to get out of your speeches?
No, now, let me just give you a little background. This paper was written approximately in 1969 and presented in 1970. It was written for a group of black psychiatrists who were looking at racism.
Yeah.
It was also written because as a psychiatrist and working in a hospital trying to treat black people and white people, but recognizing that the majority of the problems that black patients had in a psychiatric hospital, when you took a history, you would run smack into racism. So I knew I had to understand racism to help solve the mental health problems of black people. Okay. So out of my brain computer, putting in the question, why? Why do we see this behavior? Why have we seen it for hundreds of years? So I thought about these two things, basically two facts, that even though the white population says that people of color are minorities, that it is the white population that is the minority on the planet.
That's the reality you're saying.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
That in spite of the fact that black people, non-white people have heard over and over again, you're genetically inferior because you are non-white. That in reality, white skin is a genetic recessive status, not as said by Francis Welsing. You see, meaning that if
you and I were to have a baby, the baby would have color, and you make the contribution and I don't.
That white plus colored. Well, wait a minute. It's not Francis Welsing that is concerned about the disappearance of white. Ben Wattenberg just wrote a book, The Birth Dearth. There have been multiple articles in the newspaper talking about the decline of Western populations.
Yeah, here's the Washington Post, just to name one. We are a depopulation bomb, the withering of the Western world. Here, incidentally, this was the percentage of the West's population in 1900, the turn of this century, about 30%. This is where we'll be, less than 10% in the year 2075. Here's where we are about today, 15. So we're not having babies.
So whites are not having babies, and there is the concern about white genetic annihilation. In other words, I look at, this is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday holiday, and people will say, well, here's a man who talked about love. Yeah. Why was he killed? And I say that the deeper logic is, what if all black and white people and non-white people and white people love? What would happen to white people? White would disappear. You see, just mix all of the people on the planet up together.
In other words, if race didn't matter, or if color didn't matter, it follows with the jet planes.
No, I'm not saying if it didn't matter. I'm saying that indeed if there was a mingling of all of the people, because
that's what I'm saying.
Okay, fine.
Absence of prejudice.
The ability, no, wait, don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we mixed all of the people presently on the planet, stirred them up,
the white freckle-faced people would be gone.
Genetic recessive status would disappear. And that if I did a survey and everybody didn't have to, face anybody, if I said how many people who are white want their children to be white, want their grandchildren to be white, want their great-grandchildren to be white, want their great-great-grandchildren to be white. And I've gone all over the country in England and asked this question. Yeah. Everybody wants the children and the generations to remain white. Yes. If you do, then you have to do something to make sure that that happens. And I say that what the thing is that is done, and particularly in relationship to black non-whites, because we have the greatest genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation.
Because you're the blackest.
Because we, right.
Most color.
Right. We have this ability to produce melanin pigment. We have more of it than anybody else. And so the most pressure is on black people. As a matter of fact, the black people learn, all non-white people over the world learn. If you're black, stay back. If you're yellow, you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, mellow, white, right. I can go to England and the people can just say the same thing. Doesn't matter whether, if you go to the Philippines, because there has been a confrontation of brown with white. Everybody knows the more pigment you have, the more pressure that is on you.
Yeah.
But they didn't understand why. I said the why is for the purpose of white genetic survival.
Because we have been deceived. We have been told we are in a democracy where everybody is equal. The truth and the reality is that we are in a system of racism, white supremacy. See, we're told that the system of democracy has imperfections. No, we are in a system of white supremacy that has been perfected. And that's why we keep staying basically in the same position. And as long as we don't understand we're dealing with a system, every week we just complain another black man has been shot, another black man has been killed. We say, oh, 10 over there, 3 over there. Oh, well, let's add up the statistics and somebody will run and complain about it. But if it's happening over and over again, that implies intentionality. And if the system is about white genetic survival, who is the enemy of the state? No, the black man. See, in a war, if you can take care of the business as defined, the problem is white genetic survival. So what do you have to knock out in order to not worry about white genetic survival? Exactly. The attack has to center on the black man. Now, years ago, in the 1970s, I was teaching at Howard University College of Medicine, and I would have Neely Fuller lecture every Monday night from 8 until 1 o'clock in the morning. And it would be students and people from the community. And Mr. Fuller used to talk about the system of racism, white supremacy, is going to have black men wearing dresses. And now this is 1970, about 72, 73, and that sounded so far out. Nobody, you know, what's he talking about? What has recently happened at Morehouse College? The president of Morehouse College had to announce and lay down the law that the black male students, those who are so inclined, could not wear high-heel shoes, could not wear dresses and carry pocketbooks. Now this is 2010. That if the system, see, in other words, we have to keep system about white genetic survival. This is what the system is about. And the system is working 24/7. If I turn the black male into a female, can I relax about the fear of white genetic survival? Absolutely. Now, I don't know what goes on here in New York. Haven't been here in a while. In D.C., we have a lot of men with their pants hanging down. In the train station, when I bought my ticket to come here, there's a black gentleman had on some expensive clothes, had some nice luggage. His pants were down here. So he would pull the luggage like this after he got his ticket, and then he'd have to stop. Walk a few more steps.
Wow.
See, now, in other words, imagine somebody looking down from another galaxy or planet. You see, in other words, psychiatrists' behavior, all behavior has significance. You just have to understand the context and the power that is controlling it. Do you see what I'm saying? So, to understand what is happening, because what are we told? 70% of the households are without fathers. Read a book recently where a young black man is talking about having gotten into some difficulty doing a carjacking, carrying a gun at 16. And he said in the book, I had to go to prison to find my fathers. He said, fathers, he said, in prison was the first time he had an opportunity. Now, he didn't consciously put himself in that situation, but looking for fathers. I had a black male child say to me, you know, somebody brings a child to the psychiatrist because he's not studying or something. I had one child say to me who was about 10 or 11 years old, Dr. Welsing, I think I could do my homework if I just had an official father. Now that makes the psychiatrist want to fall under the desk and start crying. I had another child say, if I had a father, he could at least have taught me what goes on under the hood of a car. I had another child. All these children are brought into the psychiatrist because somebody says, teacher, principal, they're smart, but they won't do their homework. Or they won't study. This child came, and I said, sweetheart, don't you want to work hard in school? This was years ago. So you can help black people. And this little boy said, no. He wasn't being smart alecky, he wasn't being rude. And I said, you know, the psychiatrist wants to hear the child say yes. He said, no. And I said, why not? He said, if you try to help black people, you're going to be killed. Now this is a little black child about 11 years old. Said Malcolm X, George Jackson. I said, IQ 265. If you try to help black people, you are going to be killed. Was he right? That's like President Barack Obama has had more death threats than any president in the history of the United States. You see, because just that presence of a black man in the White House, like I think a lot of white people who initially voted for him wanted to appear liberal. You see, but once he's in that White House, and a black man with a black wife, and a black grandmother, that's the whole package. They begin to understand, oh my God, if he's in power, and not only that, the reception that he receives all over the non-white world. You see, so they started
Dr. Frances Welsing, give us the benefit of your theory, please.
Well, my theory was, I wrote the paper in 1969. I wrote a paper called The Cress Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism. And the sole reason behind writing that paper was an attempt to understand the behavior of white people in relationship to all people of color, every place in the world, black, brown, red, and yellow people. And the paper was presented to the Americans at the National Medical Association, the section on psychiatry in neurology, because back in 1969, the Black Caucus in the American Psychiatric Association, we had said that racism, and when we talk about racism, we're talking about the white supremacy behavior of white people. That racism was the #1 mental health problem in the nation, and it was the #1 cause of other mental health problems. And I wanted to understand what this thing of racism really is all about, because it's the thing that has caused woe and misery and suffering for the vast majority of the people on this planet that are classified as non-white. And in my attempt to understand why the necessity of white people to keep saying that white is superior and that the condition of non-white is inferior, and the more I thought about it, in conjunction with an idea that a friend of mine had, that racism was a worldwide behavioral system for the maintenance of white supremacy by a small minority of people, I put those ideas together with what we know about genetics, what we know about the condition of skin whiteness itself. The condition of skin whiteness is the genetic inability to produce skin pigment called melanin. This is a genetic recessive trait. It is a genetic deficiency state, not as defined by Frances Welsing, but defined by geneticists and dermatologists, that the inability to produce the skin pigment of melanin or melanin pigment is described as albinism. And I think that white people, even though most white people are not consciously understanding their problem in genetics, they are certainly aware that they are genetically dominated by people of color. That's why it was a statement, one drop of black blood makes you black, because people of color have the genetic capacity to annihilate white people. And so unless white people control the reproductivity of people of color, then we can postulate that perhaps one day there won't be any white people. And I think that the very survival of white people necessitates that they project genetic inferiority on people of color, because it is they who really are aware that they are genetic recessive and perhaps genetically inferior to people of color. And I am not saying this to call the condition of skin whiteness to say, well, no, white people are inferior. I'm not saying it for that purpose, but I think that it is of prime importance for the majority of people in the world to understand why it is that white people have to, the effective majority, large numbers of white people, have to move in a hostile and an aggressive way against people of color, and have to constantly focus on it's you who's genetically inferior, because they realize that there's something wrong with their genetic status. Now,
may I take a call?
Oh, sure,
All right.
please.